Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know.
My Bigfoot sightings began in 1980. My name is Gregory Helton. I am an Army veteran, and I grew up in Manitou Springs, Colorado, where my first Bigfoot sighting happened. It affected me so much in my life that I've actually written Bigfoot into several of my stories. I was raised with my stepdad as a Native American. Bigfoot is huge in the Manitou Springs legends of the indigenous population there. They were the actual guardians of the medical spiritual springs that are so prevalent there. Only the Native Americans who needed those spring waters would actually go there and get them. And the guardians were the top, I would say, most ferocious beasts that were turned into the guardians: mans, bear, and boars. So that's what they were designed to do, to protect those springs. Now, my first encounter I was about 10 years old, and I was on the east side of Williams Canyon. If you look on the map of Manitou Springs, just go slightly north where you see Cave of the Winds, that whole canyon to their east is literally Williams Canyon. And as a little kid, I was just chucking slate rock, which is basically flat slates of rock, onto a dirt roadish path. Just because I was wanting to and I was a little kid. And as I threw like my fifth slate rock, I looked down, and across the way from me was this black hairy creature. Okay. Growing up in the 1970s, there was a show called Land of the Lost, and there was three hairy primates, creatures that kind of resembled this creature. Okay, they didn't have long, flowy hair or anything like that, or fuzzy hair like bears. It was stringy hair. Okay, and it was obviously a young female and she had I would guess a 2-foot tall toddler. Okay, and she's trying to push it up into the cave they were near, because the canyon is filled with little rudimentary caves everywhere. Not like huge caverns, but Cave of the Winds itself has giant caverns that lead everywhere, and the whole canyon has caverns. And I tripped out really big time because I'm looking at these creatures, and then I hear a sound to my right as I'm looking down the canyon towards the left. So I look north, and the bushes are about chest height to me at this point in time. And all of a sudden, these bushes that are like 20 feet from me just start shaking. Okay, I've studied animals throughout my life. No bear, no puma, no wolves, no chipmunks, no snakes, no lizards shake bushes like these. It was like something was laying behind them, shaking them like crazy, realizing I'm a young kid, trying to scare me away. So basically, it did its job. I was like terrified of what I just saw down in the canyon. Did not know what was going on at that point in time. Turned and ran south, jumped the highway, literally risking life and death to run across the Highway 24 and run back home. Okay. We're going to skip about 3 years. Me, my friend Greg Del Piano, and Sean Flanagan. Now, Sean Flanagan, as his name, you would think that he's some Irish boy. He's only half Irish. His mom's from Harlem, New York, and she felt that she needed to send him to the West to his dad because Harlem, New York was getting pretty, gang related. Well, I met him. I instantly loved him, and he was a really cool kid. So me and Greg Del Piano and Sean Flanagan, one summer, it was like, I think it was like the summer of 83, we decided we were going to go camping. The three of us, right? So we got our tent, we got some provisions, and we hiked up Bar Trail. Okay, if you go to Manitou Springs map, the Bar Trail is like at the west end and the south end of Mount Manitou. Okay, and my YouTube channel, Chaos Entertainment, has like a green, yellow, and lettering, okay, with spatial background. That will lead you to one of my sightings retelling, shows you the actual map area where we had it, which is like about half a mile to 3/4 a mile up our trail. Then we deviated, and so now we're between the Cog Railway and Mount Manitou. We decided, hey, it's a great little place, a little pond for fresh water, set up our camp, and the next thing we know, we are, having fun, telling tales, talking about the girls in the school. And then it gets to be about, midnight. We're all like, okay, it's time to bed down for the night. So we let the fire die down, and then we go to sleep, and we're in a little 3-foot tall tent. It's not the dome tents, it's the triangular tents, from the 1970s and 80s. Well, I woke up middle of the night because of the light. The fire was supposed to die down by now because we're on Pikes Peak granite. It's like a rose granite. Fire doesn't spread easily because it's not like a lot of loam or dirt buildup. It's hardcore granite. I mean, it's hard to, bang in your tent stakes into it, straight up and simple. So I looked down at my feet, and we had left the tent flap open, unzipped, because we wanted air to flow through. It's summer. And I looked down, and there's these giant hairy legs, standing in front of what was our fire. Something had stirred the fire up. I was just like, what the heck is that? And then I noticed that as I looked upward, that its shadow encompassed our entire tent. I, shoved my buddies and then closed their mouths and pointed towards the end of where our feet were, which was the opening of the tent. And I think the creature actually heard us because it turned. And right there and then, this is traumatizing for me. I still have grappling with this situation. Okay, it's the middle of the night when this happened. The next thing I know, me and my friends are sitting up against the back of the tent. They're passed out, I'm passed out, and it's now 8 a.m. Okay, so the sun's shining. So the only thing I could think of is this creature looked down into the tent, scared us so badly that we passed out from shock. Now, my friend Greg, the other Greg, when we got out of the tent, he was pissed. He wanted to just leave. He wanted to leave everything there and get out of Dodge. My friend Sean Flanagan, he didn't want to actually leave the tent. I mean, he was that terrified that the creature was still out there, and my other friend was like pissed off and shaking him and getting him out of the thing. And then we finally fled. Okay. Now, I only had a few brief experiences after that, but they were not definite sightings in Manitou. One was walking a girl home on a mountain road, and there was a pit bull walking towards us, and she's like, oh my God, that's a pit bull. And pit bulls at that point in time got a bad rep. And then all of a sudden, and there's no real lighting on this road except maybe every 100 yards a street light. And I'm 15 years old, and this girl's like, oh my God, this pit bull is going to attack us. And the pit bull all of a sudden looks into the shadows where I've been hearing something, following us for quite a long time. And it yelps and runs behind me for protection. Now, this is a 150-pound pit bull. I mean, I'm like going, oh my God, what is going to happen? But nothing happened. We just continued on our way. The pit bull followed us like he was literally on my heel the entire time. Walked her home. I walked back, and as soon as I got near his home, he beelined it straight for his house, and I walked on home. Okay, we're going to fast forward about 15 years. Okay, and I am now 18 years old. I'm living with a roommate named Tim. We're in Oregon. Okay, Bend, Oregon. And me and him are playing a video game. Now, I don't count this as a true sighting out of all the sightings I've had, which was, 9 of them. Or 7 sightings, 9 Sasquatch. Sorry. And we're playing video games, and we hear this loud thump, thump, thump. And it kind of tripped us out because these were really heavy footsteps. We look to our right at our window, and there's this huge shadow. I mean, the waistline is at the middle of our window, which is 6 feet off the ground. So that was my only sighting that I really truly say it's kind of a sighting in Central Oregon. So I am now, grown. I went through the military. I was an NBC specialist. That means nuclear, biological, chemical warfare specialist. I had a top secret security clearance. So 90% of the stuff that I saw about people involving Bigfoot, a lot of it I deemed, fake. This is before the internet. So I am dating myself. I am 54. I've studied Sasquatch for years, ever since my first encounter. Actually, even before that, I was fascinated. My dad took me to see Legend of Boggy Creek back in the 70s, and then a few odd and end documentaries that were really weird about Sasquatch, like guys running through the woods, hearing screams, and they find bears disassembled, as I think. But anyway, so now I went through the military, met my wife, had fun with my friends in Bend, Oregon, moved to Lane County, Oregon. Okay, this is a temperate rainforest, one of the most perfect places for Sasquatches to live. Ample rain, ample water, ample food, ample plants and animals to eat on. Okay, and they are omnivores like we are. Okay. So I decided to start, resuming my Sasquatch research. And let's see. My first sighting in Lane County. I was talking to some young 20-something-year-olds that lived across from me, and I told them that I used to do Sasquatch and blah, blah, blah. So they're like, hey, let's, go and do something. So I'm like, okay, sure, not a problem. So I took them up to an area called, I forgot the actual mountain name, but it literally, you can overlook Odell Lake from it in Lane County. So if you're in Lane County, Eugene area, you just head to the highway going east towards the Chutes County, right? And there is a mountain I just turned off. I don't know why I turned off it, but I just had this, I don't know. I just drove up it. And so I'm explaining to these three people how you can identify what is Sasquatch sighting, or you get all these people who are like, oh, well, there's all these tree X's and tree structures, and being an avid primatologist as a growing up, and learning from Jane Goodall that most of the stuff that they were claiming, it was just complete BS. Okay, so I explained to these people what wind and weather can do to trees. You can explain how trees fall, lumberjacks fell trees left and right. And then there are, what apes and Sasquatches and chimps do to mark their territory or just go on a rampage to show they are the dominant male, right? And I explained to him that it's usually in a line of destruction, not just, a bunch of tree fall. And I explained to him that, big, hairy horsetail moss, which a lot of times I've seen pictures of people saying it's Sasquatch hair. No, it's horsetail moss, clinging to branches and stuff. And I explained we were looking at a gigantic 4-foot diameter tree stump, or a fallen tree. This one was fallen, not pushed over or anything like that. Its roots were decroded and exposed, and I was showing them the difference between how a Sasquatch and a bear would go at termite mounds, where a termite-ridden log. I was like, a bear would just, rake at it with its claws and then just start licking up whatever termites came out. where a Sasquatch would just rip out chunks and then just start picking off the termites or using a stick to go stick in there and then pull them off. Because, primates are a lot smarter than bears. And right there and then, we hear this, "Urgh." That was the sound. "Urgh." I looked behind me, and in the manzanita bushes. Now, manzanita bushes only grow in certain areas in the Pacific Northwest, and they grow to about 3.5, 4 feet tall. Right? They're a red-stemmed, green-leafed, rough bush. They're not prickly, but, not a lot of animals want to eat them. Okay, and there is this pure black-faced young Sasquatch. It was about 7 years old, I would say, because I've studied apes from gorillas to orangutans to chimps, and this face reminded me of a 7-year-old. And I looked at him, and all the others turned and looked at him. And he realized, standing in this 4-foot, brush, that he's now being stared at. He is totally curious. He ducks down a hair bit, but he still has his eyes, right above the limbs, like he's thinking, I can't be seen now. And I'm like, oh my God, we're staring at this young Sasquatch. And his parents can't be far away. And right there and then, this one guy, Noah, does the stupid thing from like the original Ghostbusters movie when they saw the ghost librarian. He's all, get it! And right there and then you hear it's whoop, 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 like really loud whooping sound, like all these Sasquatch researchers are saying, oh, it's calling to us, or it's calling to our friends. No, it's literally stating that there's invaders. I'm in trouble. There's, bad things happening. And literally we hear this woof, woof, woof coming from the other side of the hill. Now, it's only about 100 yards away, but it sounded like a T-Rex from Jurassic Park coming at us. So I didn't want to have to, declare to the sheriff's county that, 3 teenagers got mauled by a Sasquatch, so I started shoving them down the hillside and saying, run for it, because we're all about to die. What would you do if some strange animal got near your kid, and is screaming for help? Now, the funny thing is one of the guys was about 5'11", 480 pounds, easy. He was a huge, chubby boy. And he ran faster than all of us. Oh my God, I've never seen a fat guy run that fast. We get back to where we all lived, and he's trying to explain to everybody the sound of the footsteps. Now, he's trying to jump up and stomp at the same time when he lands, and he doesn't even come near it. It's just like, no, never mind. Okay. So a year later, I go up to a place called Weyerhaeuser Tree Farms, right? It's about 2 miles from Marcola, Oregon, in Lane County, by northeast. And I'm driving up a mountainside, and I have my Bronco 2 completely camouflaged. Right, I spent about $3,000 getting this thing to run silent. I wanted this thing so I can actually drive around the woods and observe nature without being unhindered, which worked because there was a crap load of deer I drove up on. They're like, it's just a rolling bush. Basic, there's humans in that bush. Oh my God. And they ran off, but, and that's literally what happened was I'm driving up a road and I see this, 15-year-old Sasquatch, right? Just sitting there squatting on the side of the road. Now, the side of the road he was on a 3-foot berm, right? The other side sloped down into a clearing where there was like about 3 deer trails. And I think that was probably what he was doing was looking for deer. So we go up, I'm driving up, sorry. And as I'm cruising along, he kind of glances at me and he's like, okay, nothing big. Then as I'm approaching, I'm now 30 feet from him. He looks again and realizes I'm inside this Bronco that is completely Army camoed, not nowadays Army camoed, but like 1980s Army camoed. And he's like, holy crap. And he was starting to haul butt to the south from the direction we were at. Okay. So, and I had this really horrible digital camera I bought from Japan called the Phaser. I mean, it's so horrible. You can't even find it on the internet anymore. It looks like a laser gun, but it has no focus power, no nothing. I mean, I took a picture of a deer from 2 feet away and most people thought it was a rock. That was how blurry it was. And so I hauled butt up to the area where he was, and it only took me 2.5 to 3 seconds to get to the position he was sitting at. Right. And I just started clicking that thing like it was a gun, like click, 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 click. Hopefully I could get any type of footage from this camera. And so I did get one blurry frame that was actually worth anything within focus. And he was about, 100 yards away by this time. And you caught the back of his head. And it was really trippy. So I knew that this was an area I needed to start exploring more of. Now, being a student of Jane Goodall, the reason why the chimps came out towards her was she would constantly go to that same area and not pose a threat. So I was like, I'm going to adapt that process. So I went to those areas multiple times. I took random photos. One guy, sent me back photos from my defunct website and said there was like 6 Sasquatches watching me, and then a day later, I took my stepson to the same area, literally 100 yards from that area. And we heard 3 gunshots, right, like winging off of a tree near us. And I'm like, oh my God, someone's trying to shoot me and my kid. And we hear this thump, 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 thump. So that was an experience, but not a sighting. Okay. So, about a half a mile, there was an area where about a month later, I went up to myself and decided, I'm going to start doing apple traps, and I stopped at this area that was cleared out a little bit. And I could see that one of the trees, the young, small pine trees, probably about 25 feet tall, had been pushed over, right? And on the other side of this little clearing road, it was really weird. It's like when you see a cul-de-sac, right? It was just like, that's what it kind of looked like, but not as wide. on the other side was one gigantic, like, pine tree that stood about 80 feet tall, and then another one that was just moss covered with horsetail moss, and that was probably about 40 feet tall next to it, right? And then tons of manzanita bushes are all around it. So I stopped and I was like, let's look around for a second. I don't know why. It just, something told me to stop there. And I looked to my left, and there's about 2.5 foot tall grass. And there was footsteps going towards the fallen tree, like something crawled under the branches to sleep. Okay, so I don't think Bigfoots create structures to sleep in. Okay, if anything, they just crawl under a tree. But most of the time, I think they're like, the mountain gorillas of Africa, where they build themselves, temporary nests. Well, anyways, I follow these footsteps, and I have to leap. And I'm 6.5 or 6'2". I jump from one step to another step to another step. Okay, I couldn't just step to each footprint, and I could tell that it had ripped out some of the branches to make way for it to be able to sleep under it. And it's like, okay, well, there's obviously something around here. So I walked to the other side of the cul-de-sac, where there's this moss-ridden tree with some manzanita bushes. But between the manzanita bushes and the tree was about a 4-foot width area spanning in about a 90-degree arc around this tree. Right, and that's it. The manzanita bushes weren't surrounding it or anything like that. Just it was from the south to the north degree, and it was all facing west. But in that area were about 200 young, small pine nettles branches. Like when you go to a pine tree and you see the soft pine nettles, right? It was like something meticulously ripped those off from surrounding pine trees, laid them down as a matting. And then there was, it seemed like one large creature on the south side, 2 smaller ones, and then one large one on the north side. So it was like 2 parents, and then 2 younglings, and then one large teenager who was under the tree limbs or the tree, fallen tree. And I was like, oh my God, this will be a great place to put an apple trap. And I already thought about, hey, I'm going to make an apple trap here. So I decided to start doing the apple trap between the moss-ridden tree and large pine tree. And I could start hearing this stifled breathing. So all of us who had played hide and seek, and someone's right next to you, and you're like trying to breathe, but not allowing the person to hear you breathe. Except this thing was right above my head. Okay, now, it could have been a puma, my process was, but I was also like, could have been a brown bear or black bear, but most likely it wasn't. So I continued the apple process of hanging up the apples on a tree limb. And then it's like, I have my disposable camera in the Bronco, so I'm going to go get it. So I walked to my Bronco, grabbed the camera, and there I see a doe bounding like, Pepe Le Pew from Looney Tunes. Google that and you'll understand the deer's bounding process. She stops, looks at me. I'm in my army camos from the army. and she notices that I'm not carrying a weapon. I mean, her eyes look right at my hands. She realizes I'm not a hunter, and she goes on her merry way. Now she's bounding around the trees I was just messing with. She's probably about, 10 yards out away from them, going in an arc towards the west. So I follow her so I can get a picture of this deer. I was like, this is really cool. I actually got a, disposable camera, as some decent film, not like my horrible phaser. And I'm right about to click a picture of her as she's passing the two trees. Her ears twitch. She looks up to her left, about 20 feet up in the air, and her butt drops to the ground, and her legs are doing the full, cartoon cartwheel, let's get the heck out of here scenario. And right as about to take a picture, I realize, oh my gosh, she's coming at me. She's not looking at, or she's looking at what's coming behind her. And she's just not looking at me at all. And she's making a beeline straight for me. I jump out of the way. And as soon as I look past, watch her pass me, I hear this loud thump. I mean, this was a very loud thump. This sounded like an Allosaurus jumping out of a tree. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what was that? And for a split second, I froze. Like, what do I do? And then I hear this thump, thump, thump going down the hillside from where we were. And I grabbed the camera's in my hand. So I run towards the edge line of the hill. And I look down, and before I actually raise the camera up, to take a picture, I see this giant black hairy mass of a huge Sasquatch, blasting into the tree line, and I go down there about, 5 minutes later. I had to recall myself. And the saplings were twice as tall as I was, and I'm over 6 foot tall. And this thing's shoulders were as tall as the saplings. Right. So I kind of freaked out a little bit. I was like, okay, let's go back home and recollect and do another day. Okay. So then I took my friends, invited them to down to Myrtle Point. A lady contacted me asking if I could research her property and the areas around there. And also within the same day, I was talking to a man who saw my Bigfoot sticker on my Bronco and started talking about how him and his friends would go hunting in the same area, just like their dads and their granddads and their great granddads, blah, 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 for bear. And basically Sasquatches came at their truck, screaming from mountaintop to mountaintop to mountaintop, to where the glass rattled in their truck, and all these heavily armed men hauled butt. Asked him if he wanted me to, if he could show me the spot, and he pointed on the map, and I was like, would you willing to actually take me there? And he's like, not with 101st Airborne. So that's how terrified all these guys were. So I was like, okay, well, I'll grab my small group of researchers and take him down there. Right. And this was the really weird aspect of it, is 3 of them were wanting to see how much I knew about Sasquatch. They were planning to test it by making stupid little structures with limbs and seeing what I could understand. But before they can even do that, we stop the Bronco, we go up onto this top of this little ridge, and we can see down the valley about a good mile, right? You could see clear cutting, how the forest would do it, that they clear cut, and you could see all the brand new little pine trees being planted. And I'm sitting there talking to the guys about what they're expecting to see, what they're expecting to do. And all of a sudden, out of the side of my eyes, I see to my right is a Sasquatch, a young one, probably 19 years old, turning and staring above a stump, like he was using the stump as a pillow and just kind of relaxing, looking out at the valley. And I was using my film camera at that time, just kind of randomly filming and stuff. And I told the guys, like, don't look really right now because there's a Sasquatch probably at 30 feet from us. And then all of them looked right at it. And it instantly slinked under the back behind the stump. And I was like, guys, do not run at it because it is a lot stronger than you and you don't want to mess with it. So I was like, let's give it space and we'll go off to another section. So we go hiking in about a quarter mile north from there. And we see 4 large, gigantic trees had been pushed over, right? And one tree pushed over on that one, and surrounding it was blackberry bushes. About 20 feet tall, 30 yards thick, surrounding this area, which was really weird. It was almost like a fortress. That's how weird it was. And on the tree going to the fortress, you could see where the moss had been growing for years, and there was a wear trail on top of it, like something had been walking on there, And as we climbed up on there, started walking over there, and I'm like, guys, you need to be ready. If we have to haul butt, you guys are going to really need a haul butt. So we get up to the area and we see several deer skeletons in various stages of decomposition. Now, I know this isn't a human hunting slaughter area, where someone would dress their kill, cut off the legs, take the antlers, whatnot. The skeletons were almost intact. Deer hair was everywhere on the surrounding logs. And I mean, these were 4-foot thick trees, stumps or trunks, surrounding this thing. It was almost like they were spreading the hair out on these things. It was really weird. And they ranged from about 1 year to 2 weeks decomposition. I actually took some of the bones to one of the biology professors that I was going to college at, and they confirmed what I said was what it was, and they were amazed that I could actually just look at them and say, hey, this thing was at 4 months decomposition. And I took a picture of a deer skull, right? It was a stag that didn't have the antlers removed, which was really weird because it was Colorado terms, it was an 8-point stag, which means it had 8 points on each antler. And it was stuck against the corner of one of the trees that was like a pillar. That was the weird thing, was each log, right, the corners were a tree. It was really, really, really weird. And some of the party were were freaking out a little bit. So I took what I could, noted what I could, and then we left. And as we're walking up a road, the guys are like, "Hey, look at this. We saw something." Two of the guys are like, and so you got those images of tree structures where you got a bunch of trees laying against each other, kind of like a teepee, right? And they're like, "Look at this. We just found this." And looks like a larger than humanoid handprint in it. I'm like, guys, if you're going to make jokes and crack jokes about that, please don't do it while we're Sasquatching. Because obviously I know you guys did this because Sasquatches wouldn't just make a stupid little tree structure that's 6 inches tall and put their hand in there. I studied archaeology. And I kind of chastised the guys for being, morons about that. But I let it go. And as we're walking up the road back to my Bronco, it's, an hour and a half later, I'm hearing thump, thump, thump to the right of us. And it's probably up on the berm from us 35 yards away, if that, more of a like 45-degree angle up from us to our right. And one of the guys is just like, "Dude, does this guy even know where we're going?" And my other friend is like, "Of course, he's Indian. He knows exactly where we're going." I thought that was kind of funny at that situation. And I already knew exactly where we were going because I knew topography from studying the map of where we were going. Anyways, but every time we stopped, I'm like, "Guys, stop for a second." The footsteps to the right of us, who are paralleling us, stopped, which was really trippy. And I knew something was very interesting, most likely the first creature we saw. So we get up to the Bronco, drive on home, right? I report to the lady who asked us to come there that, she did have Sasquatches in her area because she had seen them, checking out her ostrich farm. For the other people that contacted me, I talked to them because the same area I'd researched. I confirmed their sightings and then basically let it go. Okay. And then about 5 months later, I go do a symposium in Hillsboro, Oregon, talking about how I believe that there was not just one species of Bigfoot. There was multiple species, mainly determining on the sagittal crests, lack of sagittal crest, the blue eyes that people have seen in these creatures to solid black eyes, various not. Okay. And then about 3 months later, I take my stepson and his friend who was in the Big Brother program. I decided to teach them how to track animals. So we go up Blue School Mountain Road in Cottage Grove. And at this point in time, there was not a lot of houses there. It was mainly forest. So I'm walking along and I take a styrofoam plate filled with dehydrated cranberries and stuck it near our car, just to make sure that, I can tell if something had been there. Most likely it would have been deer. So we go heading down, and I don't know why I stopped there. But it was really, really fortunate. We walked down and there's like all these blackberry baby bushes starting. I don't know if you ever stepped on a baby blackberry vine. They are very sharp and you do not want to step on them with bare feet, because they're not very tall and they're not very long, but they're very sharp. And so we're walking through an area and I noticed there's another ravine with a tree that had just been pushed over, but it was only about 1.5 to 2 feet wide, moss growing over the side, so it's been there for years, but there had been a literally distinct footpath, right? So we're walking along there, and then I'm teaching them about the deer paths, the deer prints I seen, the squirrel prints, wolf prints and stuff like that. I was able to point out a couple of the black bear prints because that's what a lot of times people misidentify as Sasquatch prints because they don't realize a bear will step into its own print from hind foreleg to hind leg and what so. And then on our way back, and I've explained these guys that if we saw Sasquatch, the one thing you don't do is scream and point. Well, my son's friend, he forgot that point. And the weirdest thing is I felt like something was around us. So, and I always carry a sword with me and a taser when I walk into the woods. I mean, a taser, all you have to do is clack it into the air. And most of the animals will feel that electricity and they're like, okay, I'm not messing with you. But I also have a giant ninja sword I pulled out. And I was like, if there's a black bear around, and it messes with my kid, I'm going to trash it. And so I told them to stay behind me about 30 yards so I can scour ahead. And then I hear this, Greg, there it is, right? And my son's friend is pointing towards this thing. Well, basically what I saw was a bunch of saplings waving back and forth like something just crashed through it. And I bolted instantly because not thinking Sasquatch, I'm thinking black bear had dared to get near my kids. And so as I'm running through these saplings, and I mean, I'm just barreling through them like I used to do in the Army, which was not worried about little scrapes or scratches. But then my brain realized, oh my gosh, I have my 10-year-old boy with me. I look behind me and there is my stepson with this camping knife I gave him that looks like, the Pirates of the Caribbean knife that's, 18 inches long. And he is right on my heels with this face of, if anybody, messes with my stepdad, they got me to deal with, and I by the time I got done with that processing that, it was a few seconds and I turned my attention where I was running and there was this small gully about, 10 feet deep, 15 feet wide. That was from where I was standing to the road. And you could see where there was and I mean, when I saw this halfway through this running, I saw a black mass, just a small glimpse of a black back of something large upright running. And then by the time I get to the clearing where this gully was, you could see where there's a bunch of dirt, coming off of the road. Or not the road, but where the road is. And something that literally long jumped, to this thing and then bolted. And I didn't see it after that. So I got the kids, went back to the van, and basically all the cranberries are gone. So we went off of that scenario. My son's friend didn't want to go to the woods anymore, which is acceptable. Most kids or most people, once they see a Sasquatch, there's three ways you're going to deal with it. One, you don't want to go near it again. Two, you deny that you actually see it. Or three, you're like a lot of us, I have to see it again. Okay. Now, one of the sightings I'm going to say is probably, how do I say? One of the trippiest sightings I saw. I dropped a person I knew off at Marcola, Oregon, not far from one of my first sightings in Oregon, because he lived there. And their entire population over there has Sasquatch sightings, or their dogs do at least. And I'm driving home to Springfield, Oregon. I'm about 6 miles from Springfield. And it's twilight, and I see this thing. I thought it was a broken telephone pole for a split second, because I'm driving, I'm not paying attention, and it's half the height of a telephone pole. And the rural telephone poles, not the city telephone poles. And as I drive by, I notice as I look to my right, it's not a telephone pole. This thing is a human hairy body, like big. And I look behind me, and I can see cars behind me. And this thing passes behind my van. I look to my left as I slow down, like really quickly, and I look to my left, and this thing walks towards the south from where I was, and just steps over this barbed wire fence like it was nothing, and just keeps on strolling. So I go back, and I freak out, right? And every time I've seen him, I kind of trip out. Go tell my wife. She's like, okay. So I go back the next day, and the barbed wire fence was up to my waist. Okay. And the barbed wire fence was to its knees. So the thing was about 13 feet tall. This thing was huge. It didn't sway his arms like you would think. It was more like the Paul Freeman's footage. The arms just stood there kind of limp as it walked. It was really thick-bodied, and it didn't make a lot of pronounced movement and stuff like that. And that one was really, really trippy. Okay, so then I am asked to go to another place to investigate another area from OregonBigfoot.com. Where some police officers were camping, and they heard screams roaring, and basically a black bear charged through their campsite. Now, these are two guys in lawn chairs or camping chairs in front, between a fire between them. Now, the black bear runs around one of them. And they're like, holy crud, what was that? And they hear these loud thumping steps. And there's this gigantic Sasquatch running through them, right between them. Ignores them to get all together, ignores the campfire. His only fixation is on that black bear. And this is a large 10-foot male. And it just bowls the two cops over. And it just keeps on going, totally ignores them all. And then one of their friends sees kind of the similar situation. She's driving down the road, and what she stated was a young black bear on two legs, right, running across the road. Black bears really don't run. And she doesn't know the difference between black bears and apes, apparently, and sees another black bear on all fours, larger than it, chasing it. And then two larger black bears that stand 7 to 8 feet tall on hind legs chasing the third one or the second one. And so my friend's like, you know a lot about primatology, bear anatomy. Can you go, investigate this area? It's like, sure, not a problem. So on my way there, I'm cruising down this mountain road and I'm like, gosh, I gotta pee. So I stop on this little pull out that's kind of like got this arcing. Now, this is the sighting that is probably the most unique out of all the ones I've ever had. And it freaks people out when I tell them that, because I think I'm the only human being on the planet Earth that's ever had this happen to. Okay, so I don't even know there's any Sasquatches in this area. So I stop, and there's this little arc of a land thing, like you can see it's a little cliff area, right? And just to pull out on the little dirt road. And I'm still going from Cottage Grove to Myrtle Creek, right? But I'm going through via forest roads. And so, and I noticed that there's a clearing of the trees, and I was like, well, I got to pee, so I'm just going to pee off this cliff. And the area was probably a good, square mile clear cutted area, forestry clear cut. And I'm like, okay, well, I start peeing, and I goes, "Argh!" That was literally the sound I heard. Now, being a person, who is like, oh my gosh, what was that? And instantly, I looked down because I think I just peed on some person. And there's this Sasquatch looking up at me like, dude, you just peed on me. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was so embarrassed, not because it was a Sasquatch, because, someone saw me peeing. It was like full embarrassment mode for me, angry mode for him. And then for a split second that happened. And then we both realized what we were, and what we were looking at. He's like, oh my gosh, there's this human thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this Sasquatch thing. And then he goes around the right side of the cliff to the south, trying to hide from me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go to the right, and he shifts to the left. I go to my left, he shifts back to his right. And I'm like, I need to go grab my camera out of the car, right? And I hear this loud whooping sound, like what you hear in the documentary. Whoop, whoop. Just like the young Sasquatch did about 30 miles to the east. And to my left, now I'm thinking that there's actually two in this area that I disturbed. Because as I'm running to my vehicle, which is only 10.5 feet away, I noticed that there was another Sasquatch running up to the west from this spot. But it's about, 30 yards to my south. And it's a young female. She's a very thin female. I don't think she was, a fully developed female. She is only about 6 feet tall, very thin. And she is making a beeline, looking directly at me in complete terror. And she's running up the hillside. And just as I got my camera, I heard this sound coming down the hillside from the west. on the opposite side of the road, about 100 yards away, 200 yards away, but it sounded like King Kong coming down the mountainside, ready to kick my booty. I mean, I was so scared and terrified because what I've heard from hunters and the ones who have actually shot them, who were basically the bullets don't hurt those ones, or they don't stop the really large ones. And it was like, I'm about to die. So I got in my vehicle and I hauled butt and until I got to Myrtle Creek and I stopped for gas and some guy's like, "Hey, sir, you need to fix yourself in your zipper." So, I was really embarrassed in that situation. And that was probably the most extreme situation of Sasquatch that I had. I mean, it was pretty trippy. That was the most memorable one I've had. I do have several books where I have Sasquatches enabled into the stories. One is Knights of Eternity. The other one is Scions of Michael, where the Call to War is Scions of Michael is the trilogy where the Archangel Michael comes to Earth, meets Sasquatches, and then with their help, he goes to Washington State and leads an army of Sasquatch to fight demons in Seattle, Washington, to help free humankind from demons, which is really, it's a pretty trippy book. I also like, if any of you are gluten-free, check out me and my wife's YouTube channel. We are Good by Gluten. That's the word good -BYE space gluten. And we teach people how to cook gluten-free. We also, for the people who know gluten-free people, or you just love to cook, go ahead and check out our YouTube channel. Also, I have Chaos Entertainment, which is my other YouTube channel, which you can link in from that one, but it has space-like planetary background, green and yellow lettering. I do all sorts of weird movies, bands, music, gaming. So I do an eclectic thing of all sorts of chaos entertainment. You can also check out with the links that I have on both of the YouTube channels for my novels, which are on Amazon.com. You can do Kindle. You can order print on demand. You can also check out my art sites, because I do a lot of artistry, digital artistry, photography, a lot of dinosaurs. And that, I think, is about it for the evening.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking A bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. soul in the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards, backwards in double time. Can hear the soul in the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Something going backwards, backwards in double time. Can hear the soul in the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm, fried chicken, porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.